Welcome to the Writer's Journey podcast. I'm Michael Laran, a science fiction and fantasy author on a journey to go from nobody to bestseller, and I'm documenting every step of the way. Tune in every week as I pull back the curtain on my writing life and how I'm building a writing career while working a full-time job, raising a family, and attending law school classes in the evenings. You can find show notes for this week's episode, a free starter library of my fiction, and much more at michaellaran.com. Hello and welcome to episode 116. 116 is a good number, and this week's episode I've titled it A Bad Batch, which is kind of a fun little pun on words because I did have a bad batch of something and I had a good batch of something, so I'm calling this bad batch actually a good batch, and I'm just going to keep torturing that analogy until I don't make sense anymore. So hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody has enjoyed, at least in some parts of the world, our Memorial Day holiday here in the United States, or in some parts of the world, your bank holiday. Had someone write me and told me that they had a bank holiday this past weekend, so that's cool too. And certainly the weather has been great. We've had a lot of thunderstorms here, but as you know, I happen to love that. So, but again, I have a lot of energy today, so I don't know if it's just what it is, but you may hear me be a little bit more exuberant this week. But I've got a few announcements. First things first, I talked last week about how I'm building this new sales report tool for writers. I am pleased to let everybody know that it is just about ready. In fact, the pieces fell into place faster than I thought they would. I basically was working with a couple developers. They got things done a little bit sooner than I thought, and so I'm at a point where I am going to be ready to test this thing. So if you signed up to be a beta tester, or if you reached out to me regarding testing this tool, look out, because I got an email coming your way. Just a fair warning that if you're a Windows user, you're going to have blue skies. There's going to be no problems whatsoever for you. If you are a Mac user, you may run into some problems with the method that I am proposing if you do not have a computer that is strong enough to run what I am proposing. So essentially, the testing window is still open. So if you want to reach out to me, let me know. But essentially, you need a MacBook or a Mac, any kind of Mac computer that is fairly recent and that has at least 256 gigabytes of storage. If you've got 128, your computer's not going to cut it. It just kind of is what it is. But if you don't have that much, I am working on an alternative to my sales report tool that I'm calling a light version for Mac users that may not be able to do what Windows users or Mac users that can run Windows on their computer can do. It's not as sexy, it's not as glamorous. It does involve a little bit more data entry, but I am trying to work on something that's going to work for everybody. I don't know if that will be my Achilles heel here, but I am going to at least try to do something that will work for anyone who wants to at least give this a shot. So anyway, that's my first announcement. So beta testers, be on the lookout for an email, and it might help in advance if you can download a few of your sales reports, at least from Amazon and at least from the other places where you sell. Don't change any of the file names or anything. Just keep them safe. It'll save you a little bit of time down the road. So, second announcement, I want to do a quick shout out to someone that I had a chance to talk to over the past week, and that is Oz du Soleil. And so Oz is a Microsoft Excel MVP. He's one of the few people in the world who is certified by Microsoft. Microsoft basically says, here, sir, we dub thee Microsoft Excel MVP. Means he's a wizard at this stuff. I mean, he knows Excel, the ins and outs, and he does things. I've seen him do things with Excel that I didn't even know were possible. I have an uncle. And my dad always said, I have an uncle that plays like guitar, and he plays violin, and he plays any kind of string instrument. And my dad always jokes that my uncle knows how to make that guitar talk. Oz knows how to make Excel talk. And in fact, I actually happen to be on LinkedIn Learning. I've got a subscription to that through my employer. They just provided it. It's kind of one of the perks that they offer for the job. And I happen to be on it looking at courses to take for Excel and Access and stuff. And I came across this course on Microsoft Excel Power Query. And I remember taking the course and I was like, wow, this is fantastic. It completely revolutionized the way that I see Excel. And remember, you guys know I've said over the past 2 or 3 weeks that Excel and I don't mix, but now I feel a lot more comfortable with Excel, and that is due to Oz's wonderful content. And he's done a ton of LinkedIn courses. He's done books on Microsoft Excel Power Query, and he's just a genuinely good dude. Him and I had a chat over the weekend, and we were chatting. I talked on Twitter about how I was trying to get my royalty statements in shape, and so he reached out and he showed me some things that he does in Excel, and we were chatting, and he was telling me, as we were wrapping up the call, that his big thing is just he wants to empower people to use Excel, right? So instead of building tools, how can he take you and get you to a place where you're comfortable cleaning up your data and comfortable doing things in Excel that maybe you haven't done before. And so I just want to amplify his signal because I've watched his content for about the past week. I've read all of his books and I just absolutely love them. So in the show notes, I'm dropping a link to one of his books on it's called Guerrilla Data Analysis, which is really great. And then I'm also dropping a link to his website where you can see all the things he's got going on, as well as a YouTube channel. And then I'm also going to drop a link to his one of his LinkedIn Learning courses that was very effective for me if you happen to have a LinkedIn Learning account. So shout out to Oz, and a huge thank you for reaching out to me and helping me out last week. So wins for the week. So first things first is I am putting the finishing touches on my sales report tool. The bones are built. I am pleased to announce that I will be offering this tool at launch for all my friends in the United States and all my friends across the pond in the UK, at least for the pound. So I'll be able to convert currencies for the dollar and the pound at launch, which is really cool. I am on the lookout for other people who happen to publish on Amazon who are not in the United States or in the United Kingdom. So in particular, I'm looking for Australia, I'm looking for Germany. So if you happen to publish on Amazon and you live in those countries, there's just a couple quick things I would love to get from you. It's nothing personal. I won't ask for any of your personal information. It just involves a couple of things that I need to know about your country and some of the payment details. Again, I'm not asking for any of your royalty information, just some basic stuff. That'll help me build this currency converter for other people when I launch the tool. So I'd love to be able to launch in as many countries as possible. So that's just a really cool thing. I've also got... I also did this really cool thing that I wasn't sure would work, but it worked like magic. So it involves a Microsoft PowerShell script. And if you've never heard what PowerShell is, really it's just a way to automate things that are on your computer. It's just a scripting language. And so I worked with someone who had some PowerShell knowledge, and I told him, hey, I want to do this, and I want it to look like this, and I want it to look like that, and I have no idea if this is possible. And then like in an hour, the guy sent me a script and it just did everything I wanted it to do. So it's kind of like the magic glue that holds this sales tool together. Like it takes it to the next level. So I'm really excited to share that. So that was a huge win because as I started building this tool, I wasn't sure if it would actually work. Like I had an idea in my mind of what it would look like, and I just started building it with just faith that it would work out, and everything has been really working out so far, and that is just really encouraging for me. So, second win for the week is that I'd mentioned that I am going to be recording my own audiobooks. So all of my equipment for building my vocal booth has arrived. So now is the time to build it. And my friends, I am not handy at all. I am the least handy person you have ever met. In fact, let's just leave it at that. I usually can't do things around my house without getting hurt, getting frustrated, or getting both. So this is going to be really interesting. But I've got my new microphone. I've got a digital interface. I've got this giant pile that I'm looking at right now of acoustic foam that I'm going to put up on my walls. And then I've got a portable vocal booth where it's almost like a whisper room, but it's like a mini thing. It's like I just put my head in it and I put the microphone in it and I talk, and it shields out all the sound. So I'm basically going to have, I think I mentioned this last week, but I've got this little Harry Potter closet in my basement, and I really don't do anything with it except put shoes in it. And so I thought, it's tall enough for me to stand in here or sit. It's wide enough for me to get like a little desk in here, and it's got cinder block walls, which is kind of my big enemy. I just can't stand cinder block walls. But I think what I'm going to do is I've got poster board, and then I'm going to put the poster board on the wall with command strips. Now I've done this journey before where I tried to put stuff on my wall with command strips and it fell off. But that's because I was trying to hang a 10-pound painting. This acoustic foam weighs almost nothing, so I think it's going to stick. And so I'm going to put the poster board on the wall. I measured it all out and got it all cut. And then I'm going to put the acoustic foam on the poster board. And if my calculations were right, everything should hold. And so then basically I will have built my own little whisper room. And then I'm going to put like a little battery-powered light in there so I can see. And then I'm going to put a tripod in there and put this vocal booth on top of the tripod so that it's basically almost like a whisper room within a whisper room, essentially. So hopefully that will cut out the echoes, make my voice sound a little bit more present than it does now. Because like if you hear me talking now, you can hear some reverberation. That's because I'm right next to a cinder block wall, so you can hear the echo. I've got like this wide open space all around me. So my voice it's going all over the place and then coming back to me, right? Now it sounds serviceable enough for a podcast, but ACX would kick me out of the house if I even tried to think about sending audio that sounded like this to Audible. So I've got to do some things a little bit different. So I'll be talking about that, and I'll be detailing that on my YouTube channel and chronicling that as well. So stay tuned on that. Now let's talk about lessons learned. Some lessons that I learned this week that are kind of interesting. First, with writing, the lesson that I've learned, I've started writing this book, The Author Income Problem. That's going to go along with my course. And what I learned is that, no matter how much of a break you've had, you can always keep writing. Writing is like riding a bike, right? Like if you haven't ridden a bike in like 10 years, then you'll be just fine if you get on it. I mean, you'll wobble a little bit, things will be a little weird, but you'll be fine in a couple of minutes, right? Writing is the same way. Like it's been a while since I've written anything, not because I certainly have been lazy by any stretch of the imagination, but it's been a while since I've sat down in the zone to write a book. And so getting in that zone, it didn't take very long before I was back in it and off to the races. And so as many of us are dealing with this pandemic, many of us are not able to write. And so just remember that no matter how much of a break you've had, you can always do it. It's like riding a bike. Once you write that first book for the first time, you will never unlearn this skill. So that's my writing lesson for the week. The business lesson is the power of Excel Power Query and Microsoft BI. Power BI. If you have no idea what I just said, let me open the door and pull you into another universe here. As I said, writing and Excel and data and those things don't generally mix. But it's amazing what Excel can do if you actually know what it can do, right? And Microsoft has this service that they've offered for I don't know how long, a couple of years, that basically allows you to create visual dashboards. And you can ask any question of your data, and using AI and automation, it will return answers to you. And I've seen and had a chance to play around with it. Then you can import data, and it will just basically generate charts and dashboards for you using automation. It's really amazing. Like with Microsoft Excel, you've got to finagle things a little bit to get charts, and you've got to play with them a little bit sometimes to get them to look the way you want them to look and show the data you want them to show. Whereas with Power BI, it's just kind of all automatic, and there's some really, really interesting stuff on there. So if you have not heard of that, I would recommend that you check it out. And wow, is this a game changer for writers if we only knew about it, right? So that will be part of my course. And it's not going to be a Excel course or a Power BI course, but just simply to show you what's possible, because I've been blown away by what I've been able to do now that I've been able to crack this nut. Because once you crack this nut and you get past the data entry, the tedious, horrible parts, and you can just get your sales all rolled up into a pretty report that you can look at every month, a whole universe is now open to you. It's really, really amazing. So copyright lesson, the copyright thing I learned this week. I happened to go get some takeout for the family over the weekend, and I happened to be in a restaurant, and I was waiting for the food, and I happened to hear some music playing on the stereo at the restaurant, and I don't know why I thought about it, but it was just kind of interesting. I was like, how much does it cost for a restaurant to license that music, right? Like, there's Muzak and all these places where you can buy music to buy the rights to it. And so I went and looked at a couple of different rights licensing places, ASCAP and BMI. ASCAP, I think, stands for the American Society of Composers and Publishers, I think. And they're the ones you go to when you want those licenses, right? So if you want to play Michael Jackson's Thriller over the speakers at your restaurant while people are eating, right? That's who you need to go to. And so it actually costs around $180 to $300 and something a year for a restaurant to buy a license to play any of the music in the ASCAP catalog, which I thought was actually pretty interesting, and it's actually quite reasonable. So my next question was, how much would it cost to be able to use a Bob Dylan song in one of my YouTube videos? And I couldn't find the answer. They said, if you have more individual needs, please click here to contact us. I feel like clicking that button will take me into a black hole from which I will never return, and I won't like what the money will look like. So, a lesson to self: if you own a restaurant, it's not that expensive to get those copyright clearances. But if you're an author who wants to use lyrics, it's probably going to be way more money than you want to spend. All right, idea of the week. This is an idea, and I said, this is just an idea I had, or I was in the shower and I had this idea. I have no idea if someone else has done this. I actually, it would be a safe bet to bet on the fact that someone has done this, but it's still an interesting idea nonetheless. And that is, there's a planner craze going on right now. I mean, if you look at Kickstarter, one of the most popular products on Kickstarter right now is planners. It's just something about them. People love those physical planners that they can use to write in their schedules and plan their days and do all that stuff. And I bought a planner at the end of the year. It was called the Passion Planner, and I definitely recommend it. It was a great product. I just found out that I'm not a physical planner person. It just doesn't work for me, but I did enjoy using it while I used it. And I thought, it would be really interesting if there was a dedicated physical planner that was tailored to self-published writers, right? So like having a calendar is helpful. It's probably not something everyone needs, but what if there was like a marketing journal where you could write in, what's the marketing thing you did today? Or a progress log for your work in progress, right? Like there's all sorts of things that writers could use in a planner like this. And it'd be kind of interesting if, someone put together something like that. Michael Hyatt's a social media influencer. He used to be CEO at Thomas Nelson Publisher, very large publishing house, and he's done a lot of like inspirational videos and content and things on leadership and things like that. And he had a planner years ago. I think it was called the Full Focus Planner, and that was a huge hit. So like something like that, but for writers, I think could actually be really, really cool. I'm not the person to do this, so if you want to be that person, take it and run with it, and send me a planner when you're done. So that is my idea for the week, if anyone is interested. So topics for the week. This is probably going to be a short episode, and that's probably okay because the last 2 or 3 episodes have been longer than usual. So what I'm focusing on this week is how I'm batching content for the summer. So I think it was right around the beginning of all this quarantine stuff. I wasn't sure which way the winds were blowing, and so I said, okay, I'm just going to create as much content as I can, because who knows if I get the coronavirus or a family member gets it and so on and so forth. So that way I've got a bunch of content that's out there so I don't miss anything, right? And so that plan worked out amazingly well. I am now at the bottom of that batch that I made, and so now it's time to sit down and make another batch that will hopefully get me through maybe September, right? And so I'm in the process of figuring out my YouTube strategy and increasing my YouTube presence over time. And one of the things that my YouTube audience wants to see more is the super in-depth writing videos, like writing craft videos. So I did a video a couple weeks back where I went in depth into Nora Roberts and Michael Crichton, and the audience loved that. So they want to see more of that. They want to see more along the lines of my writing craft playbook. It's a freebie that I offer for joining my mailing list for free, authorlevelup.com/fan-club. That's the kind of content that they want to see. So that requires a little bit of work and foresight to figuring that out. So I'm going to be sitting down over the next day or so and figuring out what that's going to be and what that roadmap will be for YouTube. I've also been playing around with the idea of maybe doing a little bit of some YouTube live stuff, like live podcasts or live shows. I'm not sure yet. We'll see. I don't know that I'm a live person. I do a live show every month with the Alliance of Independent Authors, but we'll see. I'm playing around with it and just figuring out what that would look like. And then also trying to account for the fact that probably the first few shows that I do, there's not going to be anybody there. So how do you avoid being too awkward, when you do these things? Because when you first show up to do any kind of content, right? When you start a podcast or you start a blog, there's no one watching. There might be one or two people in the audience, and that one or two people might be your mom or your dad or your wife or your husband, So you just have to find a way to make it engaging and make it interesting for those people who are watching later, right? So, but one of the things that I've always learned is that you just have to start and you figure out how to, what was the saying? You jump off a cliff and then you find your wings on the way down. I forget who said that, but it's kind of like that when you're learning to do new things. And so I just think it's important that I continue to improve my content so that you guys continue to enjoy it. And the life of a writer and the life of any content creator is a life of someone who evolves. You've got to continue evolving. I think I talked a few weeks ago about being a dinosaur, a mammal, or a cockroach. Which one do you want to be, right? You've got to continue to evolve, got to continue to make different types of content, figure out what works, and that's all good, right? So I'm also going to be batching, after I record this actually, writing tip of the day. So I'm down at the bottom of my batch there. I did like 8 weeks worth of writing tip of the day episodes. So now I'm going to do another 8 to 12 weeks of that. And one of the things I'm going to be doing with that is I'm going to figure out how to repurpose that podcast, because there's a lot of people that listen to it. Actually, writing tip of the day is actually more popular than this show, which is weird because it hasn't even been a year, and this writer's journey has been like 2 or 3 years. So if you haven't heard it, I have a sister podcast, Writing Tip of the Day, crisp writing tip in 2 to 3 minutes per day, authorlevelup.com/flash if you want to listen to it and check it out. But anyway, I am just trying to figure that out. And what I'm going to try to do, kind of to celebrate the 1 year anniversary of the show, is I'm going to launch a new book series for writers. It's not really a new book series, but what it'll be is I'm going to take all the tips that I talked about on the show for an entire year, and I'm going to package them into a book. And you can buy that book, right? So the book will be tentatively titled 365 Writing Tips. Right? And so then when Writing Tip of the Day turns 2, I'm going to take all of the tips from year 2, roll them into either a second edition of that book or a new volume, and it's just going to be Writing 365 Writing Tips Volume 2, right? I think there's power in taking all that and then rolling it up into one book, right? Because then at first it becomes 365 writing tips. And then it becomes 530, I think, right? Writing tips. And then it becomes 700 and something writing tips. And then it becomes 1,000 and something writing tips. And then it becomes 2,000. Like that's interesting to me. It's unique, especially if the tips aren't like this dude just got them off of Google, right? Like if there's actual substance in the tips versus, I'm not going to say a lot of people do this, but some people will just go off and find stuff off the internet and just paste it into their books and, ask for $4.99 for it or ask for you to pay it on Kindle Unlimited. And, it's all about quality, right? And so that segues into the next thing that I wanted to talk about, which is how do you get inside the head of your readers? And how do you anticipate what they're going to say and maybe some of the objections that they're going to have? The reason I've been thinking about this over the past week is because in this sales report tool that I'm building, I kind of have to anticipate some of the problems that people are going to have. Because what I'm asking is not a walk in the park. In fact, I'm calling this tentatively right now the Author Income Dojo. And I'm calling it the Author Income Dojo because it's going to kick your ass if you're not careful. Some people may not be able to cut it in the dojo, right? So essentially, I need people. If you are a Windows user, just take a bow, you're good to go. But if you're a Mac user, I'm essentially asking you, if you want to do this, if this path is your way, if you want to learn how to do this, right? I'm asking you to install a virtual machine on your computer. Well, what is a virtual machine? Well, a virtual machine is basically an application that allows you to run another operating system on your Mac. So you can run Windows 10 on your Mac, right? But the problem with this, and I know it's going to be a problem, is that some people don't have Macs that are powerful enough to run this. And that could also be another issue, right? So, okay, I know that people are going to, there's going to be a lot of people that are just going to say, nope, no thanks, that's not for me, right? And that's totally fine. But there's going to be some people that say, this is such a pain in the neck for me that I'm willing to at least try it. And you can try all of this for free, which is another great thing about this. So, okay, so my thought was, how can I get people to at least try this without having to pay any money out of their pocket, right? So what I ultimately decided on was, for Mac users, I'm going to have the setup videos of how to get your virtual machine set up. And it's really easy. It's just a program called Parallels. They make it so pro. I mean, it's fantastic. You can do it in 20 minutes. Like, it sounds very technical, but it's actually not technical when I show you the videos of it, right? So you install this virtual machine on your computer, and then you have to install Microsoft Office on Windows, which is, again, very easy. You just open up Internet Explorer, go to office.com, download your stuff, and you're set, right? Assuming you have an account. So how can I anticipate what problems people are going to have along the way? Well, the first problem is that some people are going to say, no, I'm not going to do that. So do I just wave goodbye to those people, or do I have something that I can offer them, right? And the second thing is, okay, I'm installing this virtual machine, but I'm running into technical issue X. Okay, what are the technical issues that they're going to have? And then, okay, I've installed the virtual machine, A-OK, everything's great, but now how do I install Office? Okay, what are some of the mistakes that people are going to make, right? Because there are some mistakes that you can make. Like, you have to go to Office on your Windows machine, not your Mac machine, right? It's like little stuff, like little things that I have to make sure that I teach people, to make sure that I can walk them down this path to get everything set up properly. Right? And so then you're going to have to download your sales reports. Okay, well, what sales reports do you download? Which ones do you download? And where do you put them on your computer? Right? Because, like, for example, Draft Digital offers two different royalty reports. There's one that's the royalty statement, and then there's another one that's the raw data for all the information that goes into that royalty statement. Which one do you download? Right? Google Play has two different royalty statements. One of them is an absolute disaster. The other one is the one that you need in order to do this. What about KDP? If you look at your KDP dashboard, there's 3 different buttons to generate reports. Which ones do you do? So I'm just trying to, like, get in the head of people as they're looking at this tool, so that I can make sure that I have content that's going to head their questions off at the pass. And the thing about this is that you never know what questions people are going to come up with. Like, I think I can make a pretty good educated guess about what people are going to say or what roadblocks they're going to come across, but there's always things that come up that you never think about, right? You never think about them. And so I'm trying to prepare myself in some degree, in some fashion for that. Like, what if somebody reaches out to me and says, hey, I can't get this tool to work. I've tried everything. Okay, well, now the ball's in my court. How am I going to help that person, right? Am I going to have to write new code for Excel VBA? Is there going to have to be another tutorial video that I can do for them? I mean, these are all just customer service things that you want to think about, right? Because, I mean, if you're going to ask someone to pay money for your course, you got to have everything, in a pretty good spot. And so that's really been my week this week, is just putting myself in the shoes of an author that's using this tool and stepping myself through the process and figuring out, okay, where are the problems going to happen, right? And so it's just an interesting thing if you think about that in terms of your readers. If you, this is a lesson I learned early on when I was writing, because I made the choice, it was a deliberate choice, to write multiple pen names, right? So, or not multiple pen names, but to write multiple genres under one pen name. So if in the early days of my career, if you had pulled up Michael Laron on Amazon.com, you would have seen a whole lot of things. You would have seen science fiction, you would have seen fantasy, you would have seen poetry, you would have seen some nonfiction for writers. I was all over the place early on in my career. And one of my early strategies, something I said, okay, if I'm a prospective reader and I Google Michael Laron after listening to him on some podcast, what is the first thing that I want that reader to see, right? And depending on what type of reader that person is, what is the first thing I want them to see based on who they are, right? Because I've got all these genres. What if someone likes science fiction? Well, what do I want a science fiction reader to see? What if they're a fantasy reader? What do I want a fantasy reader to see, right? Because all my books are under one name. And so what I was finding was that readers would get to my book pages and they would say, this guy seems really cool, but I'm just confused. It's like analysis paralysis. I don't know what I should click on, right? And so one of my early strategies, and I still follow this to some degree, but it's not something that I declare in like my official strategy. But my early strategy was, how can I create clear choices for readers? Meaning, if a science fiction and fantasy reader comes onto my website, how can I make sure that within 2 seconds they know exactly what to click and where? And one of those solutions was to create a little app on my website. It's called Book Wizard. It's still there. You can check it out. Hopefully it still works. I haven't checked it lately. But it's Book Wizard. And Book Wizard basically asks you a few questions. And it says, what do you feel like reading today? And then you click your genre. And then, what do you like adventure? Do you like something, normal, whatever, not normal, but like, do you want something adventurous or do you want something tried and true to the genre? That's a better way to say it. And you click that, and then it spits out a book that says, Book Wizard recommends that you like this book, and then you can click on it. Right? So how can you create clear choices for your readers? So it's the same thing. I mean, readers are customers, right? They're people that are choosing to spend their money with you. So if you were a writer, well, assuming you are a writer listening to this, but how might you create clearer choices for your readers when they're buying your books? If someone buys a book directly from you, how can you create clear choices for them so that they don't have any issues getting the book onto their device? Back before BookFunnel started, this was a wild, wild west. I had a video that I did on YouTube, and it was a unlisted video where I basically showed people how to sideload books onto their different devices. And I had one section for Kobo, one section for Amazon, one section for, I don't even remember. It was just a disaster. But now you can send your readers to BookFunnel, and you can give them some pretty clear instructions on what they need to do to download the book onto their device, and it eliminates all issues, right? So how can you create clear choices for your readers? If you're a nonfiction writer, how can you create a clear pathway to get your reader from point A to point B? So like the classic example is, I want to show someone how to lose 10 pounds by starting a vegan diet, right? So, well, where are people when they come to you? Right? Well, they probably have tried vegan diets or vegetarian diets in the past, but it probably failed miserably, right? Or maybe they watch a documentary and they're pumped up, but they just don't know where to start. They go to the grocery store and they just get overwhelmed, right? Or maybe they're standing in their kitchen and they have no idea how to put vegetable A with vegetable B in a way to make something that the whole family's going to want to eat and not be hungry afterward, right? So you have to meet them where they are, and then if you can do that, then you slowly bring them down the path along the channel, and you bring them to your desired result. It's a lot harder than it sounds, right? Nonfiction writers, you guys know what I'm talking about. When I'm writing my nonfiction for writers, I have to figure out where writers are and bring them along for the ride, and some writers are in different spots than others, and so the more you do this, the easier it gets, and you learn what makes your readers tick and how to speak to them in a language that will bring them along for the ride and get them excited about what it is that you're working on. And so that's always a work in progress for me. no matter what I'm working on, if it's a book or if it's a course, if it's a podcast, if it's YouTube content. I think it's a valuable lesson to learn and something to really focus on, especially during this pandemic. In many ways, this pandemic is a perfect way to practice this because people's attentions they're elsewhere. You know, they're thinking about other things. They're distracted. So if you can attract people and continue creating content and continue writing books that engages people during your pandemic, well, I think you have proven that you can do a hell of a job attracting people's attentions and keeping it, right? You know, this is an attention-based economy. So hope I kept your attention for this episode. Again, hope everybody's doing great. I look forward to talking to you next week, and I'll have more information on my sales tool. In the meantime, peace out. Thanks for joining me this week. If you enjoyed this episode, you'll enjoy my backlist episodes at michaelaran.com/podcast. For your free starter library of my favorite novels, join my fan club by visiting michaelaran.com/fanclub. If you're a writer and want to connect with me further, check out my YouTube channel, Author Level Up, for helpful writing advice at authorlevelup.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back next week.